were there who didn't know any more about it than I did, except Osgood. We at that time started the thinking of an organization. And in this organization, we thought there'd be some way that would give me as much help as it would other callers. Now, some of the goals that were listed at that time, we have actually perpetuated and have actually done real well with some of them. Some of them we haven't done too well with. But one of the, I can look back, and I was just looking this morning, dating back on the first Direction magazine was Volume 1, Number 1, June 1972. And that's when we established these different points. One of the points that I want to discuss briefly here was at that time we had listed that caller teacher leadership training is a responsibility of the callers and teachers. We knew that other people needed help as well as ourselves. We didn't exactly know who were going to be the helpers. But also in our minutes, I noted here, we said, look into the feasibility of establishing a qualified board of instructors for caller schools that would be registered and approved by CALLERLAB. Well, this we did through actually having our caller coach program and establishing the ingredients for learning to be a caller and how to teach callers. I'll have to admit today I think that we have fallen down in some of our responsibilities. I personally think, and in some of the caller schools we're holding, and I speak of no one individual, I think some of our callers are taking new callers for the money they can get out of it, holding them in a 3-day session, but they're not leading them into a leadership situation. We need leadership instead of fellowship. And the second thing I think we have to do is the training of good instructors. We felt like, and I feel like we have lost a lot of people, a lot of good potential dancers because of our lack of leadership in the instruction basis of our classes. And I'm sure some of you have maybe disagreement with this, but this is a personal feeling. But we have made progress. We've made some progress on statement number 2, an accepted form of standardization to the vital growth, in the vital to the growth and continuation of this activity. We did actually stop this of, I would go into one area to call a dance, let's say I was in Milwaukee, but they'd want a workshop. Well, we didn't have anybody to lead us in any way, so we'd probably make up our own figure and go into that area and call that figure as a workshop item. We would go to the next city, and maybe they already had something like that, so you'd make up another. So we felt like we have kind of stopped that, and we standardized a lot of that. That was a tremendous burden, especially when you go into an area, which Lee and Arnie and Bob will recall, and many of you out here who've been around that long will know that you would go into some areas and callers would make up figures the night before they'd come to give them to you in a workshop period. And nobody would have the same knowledge of that. I think we have also have done a fairly decent job of which we had intended on our accreditation. But to present time, accreditation, I think, is waning in some responsibilities that we've made. But on the other hand, it got to the place I was seeing all along that if a guy come up and give you a slip and say, sign your name here so I can get accredited, they'd ask you to sign your name, and you wouldn't even know if he could even call a square dance. And a lot of people were being accredited that way, which is wrong. So I think we lost some of that. But I'm going to pass this back to Bob a minute. But one of the things I think that we have done, which Arnie mentions, is we did establish a code of ethics. And maybe we don't have a personal venue in this, but our code of ethics today has done a lot compared to what we used to have. And I'm proud to say I was part of that code of ethics. They may have changed it 19 times by the time I started with it. I don't know. But we did have a code of ethics, and we did have something to fall on and we could fall back on. That we didn't have. That we needed, and especially for new callers. And I don't blame all the callers. A lot of callers were thrown into an activity like I was thrown into an activity. They had nobody to lead them. So we felt like we needed to offer some leadership. And that's what we tried to do in the beginning. I'll pass it back to you, Lee.
Let's stop right here and ask you to give us some of your ideas or perhaps your expectations of going back to the theme of your CALLERLAB convention this year. It's on your badge. A new beginning. We went through a beginning of CALLERLAB, and we feel that, I feel very strongly that you're on the right track, considering something about the beginnings and getting back to the more fundamental and basic things. One of the things that Bob Osgood, or what was your name again?
Van Antwerp.
Oh, Van Antwerp.
Strictly Irish.
You're older than I thought.
One of the things that this Bob and I had the advantage in getting started in Square Dance Calling was we were both in recreation. He worked in recreation. I worked in recreation with the city of Los Angeles here for a number of years. And one of the things, if you stop and think about it, is that the recreation that people are getting now as compared to recreation that they were getting before there was television, computers, interactive networks, and that sort of thing done on an individual basis, was the fact that square dancing provided a very basic thing for people to come together as a group and participate as a group. And if you try and take a group of people who come to want to have an experience, a good experience in their own recreation field, without having to go to levels that are far exceed what they were looking for in the beginning, I think you'll find that, and I had noticed this over the years, that is a thing that has happened to our square dancing today, is that the levels that people have been pushing them, and when I say people, I mean not only callers, but round dance people having pushing them, has been to always a greater level, assuming that that's what the people who came in the door in the first place wanted, when really all that they wanted is just a good time for that evening without having to learn and learn and learn so much, but to stay within their capabilities and place it in their own families as a part of their life. Now let me stop there and just ask you folks, what do you think the new beginning means? Do you have an experience that this is a right thing here for CALLERLAB? Or is there something wrong with the concept of developing a new beginning, which might be going back to 1970s in terms of what we're doing? Here's right here, he's going to use it, yes.
To my way of thinking,
Who are you?
Ben Goldberg.
Oh, I know
Yes.
Thanks, Dad. To my way of thinking, a new beginning means it's time for self-reflection to make sure that we're following the path we started, and that it's the path that makes everyone succeed at what we are doing.
What is your view of that answer to that question?
It's time for a change to bring back what we once saw because of our dwindling numbers, which is saying we're not doing the right thing.
How many of you would agree with that statement?
It's worth a hand, not a clap.
Pretty unanimous. Yeah. All right, let's hear from some of that. What are you saying is a new beginning is what you want, is what you feel that the people want, and you want to go back to it. Yes.
Thank you. Bill Martin, Tustin, California. Can you guys hear?
Yeah.
All right. I feel that the new beginning is a desperation title. it's a title that we're grasping because we see the problems that we're having. So we think the title of the theme of the Caller Lab meeting will give us something. I'm not sure that it's given us anything. But yeah, just by way of my experience, I don't think a return to the old days is going to work. I don't think that's the answer. I certainly do believe that things must be simpler, and I don't necessarily agree that the callers are responsible for pushing the dancers. I know as a new caller, the dancers push me. Every new caller has a little entourage that follows them and him around, and they're always wanting him to call harder and harder and harder. So it's not necessarily just the caller. And I certainly feel that part of our problem is the callers are still exploiting the activity, because we have a lot of callers that are making their living in the activity, and the way they make their living is to make sure that they got the workshops so that they have the income. Where when it was the caller like myself that worked and called, the money that we took out of the activity was strictly incidental. It paid for our records and stuff like that. We were not making a living. I believe that's, and leaders like you and Bob that had experience in recreation, knowing how to motivate and deal people, we've lost. I don't know how to motivate people, you know. I can just call them a dirty word or something.
Well, to me, a new beginning, Tony Nevison up in Northern California. To me, a new beginning in this theme means to let's get rid of a few calls and replace them with some more of the people type, down-to-earth social activity, people interacting with people, not just teaching calls. Let's teach callers to teach a little bit more about appreciation of other people and having them welcome in new dancers.
Bob Coates. I'm not a caller. I'm representing United Square Dancers of America. I started square dancing back in '63.
Hold the microphone a little closer to you.
I had started dancing back in '63 or '62 I should say, when we had one level of square dancing. And I know the problem. I mean, I know the levels were established, were necessary in a sense of the word, because we weren't all dancing the same thing. We're dancing experimental figures and so forth. But the only problem that has come out of it is the dancers, and not the callers, but the dancers themselves, have set a prestige level. Because the people that have been dancing a few years will get their friends to join a club, beginner's class, and the minute they get them out of the beginner's class, they want to drag them up to the next level. And it progresses. And that is one of our problems that I see.
Bob Osgood, what do you think of that?
I have an opinion on it, but I think the thing that, besides stepping long enough to say that putting one of the first statements we had was put the dance back in square dancing. I think we need to put the fun back in square dancing. We are appealing, I'm guessing, to 15% of the total number of people who would like to square dance. And in doing that, there's a lot of things that we need to look at, and that is the great majority of people, 85% that would like to square dance, we're not meeting with the programs we've got. I'd like to bypass the idea of basics. And I think maybe Van could do a better job of coming directly to your question. But I do feel that the changes that might be made, and if we talk about going backwards, we're not talking about going back to the Stone Age. We're talking about the feeling of the activity, the spirit that was square dancing, the sense of cooperation instead of competition between callers and dancers. And why don't we let Van take a hold of this, because I talked to him earlier about it.
passing the buck.
No, we're passing the microphone.
Well, I think one of my feelings has been for quite some time that if you have to go to a workshop one week in order to dance next week, it is wrong. I think at the present time, and I will admit, I have had my foot in the pie in CALLERLAB for a long time, and I've been just as mean as some of the others, and have made some wrong decisions, but I will take my lumps with the rest of them.
Can I ask?
No, you can't.
If you agree with Bob in that last statement he made, just hold up your hand. To give him his lumps?
Wouldn't you like to have a one-night stand every night you go to class or club? The one-night stand that you enjoy them very much. The people are enjoying themselves, they're having fun. But when you have to keep pressing and pressing and pressing to keep them up a little bit higher and a little higher, they say, what's the use? What's the use? I don't enjoy it that much. I've got other things to do. And when you get to that stage, we have lost people. We've lost a lot of people. We've got to put that fun and recreation back into the activity. How we do it, it's not by assigning it to another committee. An ad hoc committee can't do this. We as callers are the responsible people to do it. We can't blame our dancers. We can't blame the associations. We can't blame the magazines. We have to blame ourselves. We are the culprits. And the only way we're going to correct that is if we establish a way to get back into the fun of recreational dancing. Yes, I think he has a question.
Okay, let's take her first. I think she had her, and you're next.
My name is Kathy Schultz from Canada, and perhaps we shouldn't be playing the blame game. I think we need tolerance here, because really what we have are two different types of dancers, and Jerry Junk put it very well. We have recreational dancers, and we have hobby dancers. And the recreational dancers are in for the fun and the friendship and the gimmick, all that fun thing. The hobby dancers, they want more and more challenge. So perhaps CALLERLAB has to consider both groups in preparing programs for each type. And then when a caller goes to call for, you'll know if they're recreational or hobbyists. So you'll know what type of program to prepare. So I don't know if that makes sense, but...
Okay, this gentleman back here is next, and then come back to you. Wait.
Do I get to go next? I'm Laurel Eddie Mosley from Macon, Georgia. I came into calling after CALLERLAB was established about not quite 20 years ago. CALLERLAB is all I ever knew, and I want to say thank you to you guys for having the insight and the leadership to see what we were going to need. You're all I have to look to, and I appreciate it. You asked a minute ago, Lee, whether we needed new beginnings or not.
Right.
I think we need to take a page from history and say, we need to remember what happened in the past so that we don't repeat those same mistakes. And yet we also need to take the very positive things which were developed, those values that y'all established for us at that early stage in the development of CALLERLAB, and go from there. We need to get back to good old family values, and I think that's something that we're seeing redevelop in the square dance world. We're seeing the rebirth of youth programs and the need for youth programming. And I think that's something that does fall under the category of new beginnings. I think we're looking to also change the attitude not only of callers but of dancers. And that's something that we haven't done because we have allowed the leadership aspect of our profession to sort of fall by the wayside when we got very involved in the professional entertaining side. Technical. And we need to get back to that.
Yeah. It comes forward, but before he talks, Bob...
I want to answer this lady over here. I don't disagree with you completely. What I am saying is that I think there's elements that you can go to, but let's not rush them into that element. Let them have a good time as long as you can find. If they're having a good time doing basics for 3 years, so what? If they want more, they'll find the niche down the road for that.
Harold Fleeman from California. I'd like to ask my father a question. He knows who it is. Bob, do you think levels have hurt our square dancing activity?
Yes.
That's all I wanted to say.
Let me tell you my experience. When I got into calling, I said, if it ever turns into a job, I'm going to quit. It turned into a job, and I quit. I could not keep up with what was going on. I had to go out. I thought I was a fairly decent caller, that I could entertain a floor for the evening. But I found myself going out and having to prove myself every night. And it just stopped being fun. And when the fun went out of it, I got out of it. That's been 24 years ago. I called 25 years prior to that. I miss the people, but I don't miss the activity.
What's the answer?
Give it. Hell, I don't know. I think, yeah. I think that Al Brundage and I were talking earlier this morning, and Al said back in his area, and I've been in his area, and I've called in his area, and I know this to be true, that when traveling callers came in, and I was one of them, they were given a list of what their dancers were used to dancing. This is what you can call. Then if you had a workshop along with the afternoon session or something like that, you could expand a little bit. But when you called your evening dance, you called within the perimeters of those basics. Am I right, Al?
That's correct.
Let me have a crack. I think one of the things that we've overlooked in the changes that have happened over the years, and it's in many areas, it's certainly predominant in the Southern California area, and that is the association between a caller and his club. A caller that is a club caller and stays with that club has the advantage of knowing what that club needs and wants. He's able to have a continuity. He's able to develop things where there may be deficits. And I think that how many of you in your area still have a caller-club relationship where one caller usually teaches the class and then stays with that club?
That's good.
Yeah, that's encouraging. And how many of you do not in the areas you're in? Very few do not. Well, most of this area in here, maybe we don't have many callers from the Southern California area, are visiting callers. So every time there's a caller, there's a big headline that goes on the bulletin. Tonight, Joe Smith comes. And that attracts the people. And that is one form of a club relationship, and that pays the bills a lot of times. But we found many times that it's not the caller alone that attracts the people, it's the friendliness of the club. And the combination of a friendly caller and a friendly club is unbeatable.
This gentleman over here asked why or how to change it. What's the answer? And I think I said facetiously that I didn't know, and I really don't. But I think it's the caller's responsibility, quite frankly, to lead his dancers, not by the nose or anything like that, but to call at a level that is best for the floor, for that whole floor, not calling to 3 squares over in the corner here or something like that. Put the fun back in. As I say, when it stopped being fun, I got out. And I don't regret it at all, but I do miss the people in the activity. So, if we can maybe not go all the way back, but certainly back to a era when it was fun, the activity, I think, has a great chance.
Arnie, yeah, I'll get to you in just a second. You've retired from square dance calling 3 straight times. You got 1 more to go. Osa Matthews from Palm Springs. How many of you feel that you could teach another person who is just getting into calling something about square dance calling from the standpoint of giving the square dancer in that group a real good time for a single night or for a series of single nights? How many of you think you could teach? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. How many of you now are teaching? Teaching callers. Yes, callers. Teaching callers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Did you understand my first question? Was how many of you think you could teach callers to call and satisfy dancers? That was, and we had quite a few people, and yet those people that are doing it now. Where are you from? Southern California. Central California. Maryland. San Francisco. New England, Canada. You're okay. All right, but do you notice the difference? How many people do you think that would be of the whole 400 and whatever, 50 or 70 that's registered here? Do you think that would be about the same number, or would it be as many of you? Thought. Oh, Sir Matthews, come.
From Palm Springs, California. And I was fortunate enough to have recreation program that I could direct, and had the opportunity right from the start almost of my calling to have those 4 gentlemen on the stage as teachers to follow. I hired them for festivals and for dances in the hall, and I want you to know this is the way they made me feel, that they on the stage felt that the dancers were the stars. They were the directors, but the dancers were the stars, and the dancers went out feeling like they were the stars and asking for them back because that's how good they were. And I do thank you.
For me, thank you. Did we have someone else here, or were you just scratching your nose, I guess? All right. One more?
Yeah, right here. Bill Wright, San Antonio, yes.
All right, Bill.
Her comment concerning the, I wrote it down, the hobby and the rec caller. When we developed the mainstream program and the plus programs, was that not for the recreational dancer and the hobby dancer? Wasn't that the idea of the different levels or programs?
What do you think?
I thought it was.
I don't think we actually put a name to it, really, like you're putting a hobby and recreation.
No, but
we didn't have a name to it, but the idea behind it was so in gear to the same situation.
To accommodate the dancer who wanted more.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
But we haven't used that properly.
Well,
as callers, you're talking about, yes.
Two things. Bill Kramer. And I'm from the other group. I'm from that maverick group called American Callers Association. But I started dancing in 1954, and I've danced to every single one of you at least once in my life. And that. And I miss all of you. But I think what I was trying to ask on my original question was, and it sort of answers the question you asked about new beginnings. I feel from listening to those 8 original statements that square dancing, whether you're a member of CALLERLAB or ACA or some other independent group, we've gotten away from those statements. And I think the new beginning needs to be, we need to go back to those statements, reaffirm those statements, recommit ourselves to those statements. And Lee, I went to a callers clinic that you held at the state convention, I think it was in 1976 down in Anaheim, just before the national convention was out here.
I remember.
And you made a statement at that convention, and I've never forgotten it. And when I conduct a callers class, I tell my people this. And I would like you to make a follow-up comment on this. You said at that callers convention, square dancing is a folk dance. And when it stops being for the folks out there on the floor, we need to find a different activity.
That's right. The folks on the floor are much, much more important than myself or you or any of you in terms of calling. And they're the focus, or should be the focus of the group that you're working to. And I think one of the things, and I have been privileged to go to school in terms in USC in terms of a recreation background as part of my education. And I think that some of the things that I learned before I ever learned to call, and I brought with me, and I'm sure that Bob did the same, were some of the most important things that we have. And if we can go back and think of our dancers as really the important people in the whole situation, I think that's one of the answers. This gentleman or lady over here.
A lady. I'm Aline Elliott from San Diego. I also started dancing in 1954, and I don't know Lee very well, but I certainly know the other three gentlemen up there very well.
Good thing.
My room number is 1026.
Wait a minute. You repeat it for Arnie. He's a little bit hard of hearing.
But we attended the UCLA leadership course many years ago.
1972.
Bob Van Antwerp helped raise our children through the early years of the CALLERLAB. They're all in their 40s now. These gentlemen have added so much enrichment to our lives over the past 40 years that I don't know if they'll ever know how much they mean to us. They are our national treasures, and we love you all very, very much, and last forever.
I'm going to list some things I've written down here. I wouldn't fight with you because your husband's too big. I sat at home at Lake Tahoe the other day, having nothing to do, because I know if I go down to the casinos, I'll lose my money. And I wrote down a lot of things, and probably a lot of you won't agree with some of the things I'm going to say, but that's the way the pickle squirts. I just feel like I have to get off my chest.
Wait a minute. That's the way the
pickle squirts.
Write that down.
Write them down.
Wait. I'm talking, guys. I have such love for these guys up here. That's the way the pickle squirts. But seriously, we have a lot of things to consider. And some of the things I've written down, for example, we know that hall rentals have increased and expensive callers have caused clubs to fold. We know that. We have too many callers that have started into the profession seeing dollar signs and were in no way qualified or prepared for the task. Although new callers seemingly thought they could not draw dancers unless they increased their choreography efforts, and it turned away many dancers. I think callers have allowed their dancers to dictate to them without having strong leadership convictions. They're followers. They're not leaders. I also think that many dancers have gone astray due to very poor teaching techniques, like I said before, and callers not endeavoring to improve their capabilities. I also say we seemingly, and I can't prove this because I'm not calling festivals anymore, have lost some of our dress code ethics. I hate to go into a dance and see somebody in shorts or somebody who's got a big, you know what, dancing with a skirt up. Well, I don't like that. I think there's too much of a rush to get the dancers into the higher echelon of our activity, not worrying about the consequences of dancer approval. After many hours of discussion at conventions, callers still do not do what they want to do and not abide by what the majority has voted. Some of them feel they are above that, and they are not if you're supposed to be in a group like we inside we are. I also feel that why the New Callers Association was formed, which I know nothing about, I hate to see the two groups fighting each other. I hate to see it because the dancers are becoming involved even in the magazines, responding. I think it hurts us as far as the square dance activity. I'm not saying who's right and wrong because I don't know the whole situation. I personally will agree with Bob Osgood. I feel having a new or different caller each club night is not good to having good club caller relations. If you don't like the caller, get rid of him. But clubs need leadership, direction, proper teaching, and a different one each night is nothing more than just a one-night stand as far as I'm concerned. And that leadership has gone astray. We need that one guy there. He may be poor, but if the dancers love him, who cares? And if he can teach and lead, you've got a jewel. You should keep him. But every caller, different caller, comes in, does his one-night stand, takes his money, and leaves. I think it's wrong. Now, I counted one night. In 1 year's time, we made 38 deletions, additions, modifications, and changes in our activity as far as figures and as far as levels. I think that's terrible. I'll shut up. Go ahead. You take it, Lee.
Go ahead, because I agree with you. Everything.
Well, I'm honest, but anyway. I'm just saying too much modification, deletions, changes, additions, that callers and CALLERLAB have had to be led, and their leadership is waning. We are waning in that. Well, I got just one or two more, and I'll shut up here.
One or two pages. Go ahead.
I think our universal method, which when we really started for the use of dance movements and establish a basic list, is what we did, and we wanted it to be upheld. We've added and we've deleted. I don't know where we are anymore. I stopped calling a year ago, but I still do one-night stands. But I look forward to going to a one-night stand. But I got to the place where I was not enjoying going to a club dance. And it was my fault. And to answer Bill Kramer's question, whenever you find out that is what's occurring, then you will stop doing it. And that's what I felt. I'm not go on, Lee. I want to take my...
That's the last of the list. Oh, yeah, okay. And then he's, I think. Yes, go ahead.
Tom Sellner from Maryland. Actually, Bob said about half of what I was going to say while I was waiting for the microphone. I really feel that the only way we can really affect the activity is to go back to the beginning. And what is the beginning for a dancer? It's a first-nighter. We all have to do more first-nighters. That's the first thing. That's the only way we're going to convince people that this is a fun activity. But after we do that, we have to teach them well. And we can't throw them out in 20 weeks if they're not ready. If your class isn't ready in 20 weeks, you can't let them out. I mean, you're going to lose those people. Even if the club says, we got to have them, you got to have extra workshops or whatever you need to do. Maybe they'll go to the club, but you still got to teach them. You can't let go of them, because 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you'll lose all of them. And we can't afford that, and even now. We have to teach better. We all can improve ourselves. When we stop learning and improving ourselves, then we might as well quit. That's for life and all. We all can get better. And I try every time, and sometimes it's too much, and I change too much, but I try every class to teach it better than I did the last time. And that's what we all have to do. We have to strive to be better. And when we're out entertaining the dancers, remembering we are entertaining the dancers, and we're calling to what they can do. If we're not doing that, then we're only hurting ourselves or hurting the activity. We have to call what they're doing. It doesn't matter what the list is. If they can't do the list, we can't call a list, whatever it is. And we can change it or do whatever, and we can complain about it and drop calls, add calls. That's going to go on forever. I don't think anybody's ever going to be happy with the list, no matter what it is. Somebody's always going to want to change it. But the bottom line is we don't make this fun and make it enticing if we don't go out to the grassroots that we once with and do first-nighters everywhere. We're not going to have any dancers. Thank you. Oh, by the way, Lee, you're my wife's favorite caller, she always said.
How about that? Just before we get another floor, a couple of thoughts that I have. Today, one of the big changes in calling from what we started out with, the large number of full-time professional callers. Now, there's an economic situation when you talk about a full-time caller depends upon his next meal coming from calling. And I think when we started, we had very few callers that depended upon calling for their living, and I can understand why. I think I felt that the people got gypped when they paid $7 for me to call an evening. But it has changed so much that way, and what Bob referred to a short time ago on fees is something to think about. And the other thing, before it gets too far away, because we don't have a great deal of time left, in order to get a lot of these things across, we're in a state of flux, I think, now. We're anxious, if we're talking about new beginnings and things, of some changes that might come in. We should support our callers group. We have an attendance at this particular session that is far less than we should have. I think support of CallerLab is going to be very, very important. And all of you who are placing your vote, your confidence in CallerLab and are here this time deserve credit. And I do think that we ought to really, really urge all those who are members of CallerLab to show it by coming to a convention when it is in their area. We do thank you, of course, for being here.
See, we have one over here and then one, yes.
I'm Jim Mayo from New Hampshire, and I woke up Friday morning with a thought that I then ran down to my library to check, and it proved to be true. It bears on the differences, the changes that have happened in square dancing, and also the difference between a recreational dancer and a hobby dancer. And I appreciate comments from you gentlemen. It occurred to me that the change that took place in the first 5 years of the 1960s was a change from almost totally memorized square dance routines by the caller to the first written presentation of choreographic control methods. Sight calling, the slot system or mental image system, and modules and equivalents, a modular calling. All of those were written about for the first time in the first 5 years of the 1960s. Mm-hmm. And over the next decade, many callers started to use these control techniques. The change for the dancer was that instead of walking through the routine, or perhaps just a piece of it, dancers were now expected to respond within a second to any one of the calls that were possible in that setting, and the difficulty of dancing increased dramatically during the decade as callers switched from memorized routines that they shared with the dancers and they used week after week to a routine where the dancers could not anticipate repetition of any form. And I think that made a fundamental change in the nature of square dancing that we may have overlooked.
I think you're right. I think you're right. It's good to see you. We have one over here before we come back to the lady. We have one over here. He's been waiting for...
And we also have...
All right. Well, let's see. I'm going with him and then with her and then back to him. Right.
I wanted to make my remarks towards about the one-night stands. I enjoy doing one-night stands. They are a lot of fun. But if I do a one-night stand in March and the people have a good time and they say, gee, Lloyd, I want to learn to square dance, I have to tell these folks you have to wait till September and take a square dance class in September. And they get to the square dance class in September from March if they haven't taken up bowling or golf or something else in the meanwhile. And then it's like, well, when can I go to my first square dance? Well, it's after you learn plus. Well, when will that be? You know, is it, by Christmas time? When it'll be?
It keeps getting worse.
It gets, and it's like, God, I enjoyed that one-night stand, and I see this person who just found square dancing, and they want to do it, but they got to wait. And then after they have to wait, they have to go for a long time.
Have you discussed this with other callers in your immediate area where they...
Yes, I have.
Have you had any luck in influencing them to...
Some of what your panel today has said to us is, we're callers, we're leaders, we have to lead the dancers. It's up to us to make the dance fun for those dancers. But CallerLab we've got a basic program. We've got a mainstream program. We have a plus program. We recommend things, but whether the square dance clubs pick us up on our recommendations, we can talk till we're blue in the face. We do not have a basic 48 club in the Southern California area, to my knowledge. And of the mainstream clubs that we have, if we have 4 or 5, I don't think I know all of them. But we sure have a lot of plus clubs.
They don't dance plus.
They dance a watered-down plus that they learned
They
from
stand a
September to
lot,
June.
too. This lady over here, and then we're coming back to the center. And then you're following. It's 1, 2, 3. You're... Oh, he's asking for you. Oh, okay.
Hi.
Would you give us your name? And
Yeah, I'm Shirley Shiner. I'm from Chicago, and I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I've danced for a long time. I'm learning to call a little. I think we have to recognize some things, like, for example, some of the things we have control of and some we don't. There are a lot of good things that happened. I started dancing, I guess, in '67. Didn't dance for a while, and then danced about '88 or so. But the world isn't the same as it was when things started. And as much as we might like to go back to the way things were, the world isn't like that. And we have to recognize that people like to eat fast food, that they don't want to go home and cook, that we have things out there like line dancing, where they can go one night and they don't need to have a partner. And I think, most of the things that people are saying I agree with, but we also have to put this in the perspective to realize that we can't just go back and do whatever was done before. The world is a different place. Another problem I see is that I was married for 25 years and my husband died 7 years ago. And the kind of dancing I was able to do before that and able to do after that were significantly different. And I think clubs very often do not recognize that a single dancer has some place. And I do very different dancing than I did now. I enjoy the level that I do now, but it's not the mainstream and the plus that I used to do.
Yes, very good. Good points. This gentleman here. And
I finally got it.
We're going to get it now.
Charlie Brown from California. We have so much brain power up there that I got to ask this question. You mentioned once before that you came from the recreational area, so that you had education as far as the recreational type of field, where a lot of callers, myself included, have come from more a technical background. And the caller coaching that we've had in the last, 25 years, I guess, whatever it's been established, I think has taken more of a technical term to calling rather than the recreational people handling type thing. And do you think the Caller Lab should go towards their coaches training and give more of the people handling, more of the recreational type handling, and put that more into the curriculum as far as coaching and calling should be?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel very strongly about that. Let's see, we had this gentleman here. Now, it's not a simple question to meet all of the requirements for that. It takes time to do it.
Yesterday afternoon in this, Ron Johnson from California.
Yeah.
Yesterday afternoon in this very room, we had a session, 50 Ways to Save Square Dancing. And it was a list of 50 positive things that each of us could do to help the activity as individuals. At the risk of taking up the rest of the afternoon, could each of you give us something for that list? Maybe something we can laminate and carry in our wallet?
No, wait just a minute. He's very serious about it, I think. Yes. I'll start out, and at the expense of killing off a lot of friendship, is take the very basic movements that you have, even before they have changed these, and use only those with a group for at least 1 year before you say you're ready to go out and square dance again. And while you're doing that, you add all of the things that we had talked about of making people comfortable and the relationships with people, the mixers. Another thing, and I'm a very strong advocate of this, is having the square dance caller also be the teacher of the round dance. And I know a lot of people disagree with me, and callers say it's too much work and they've got to do this. But if you teach rounds as well as the squares and work a full-time job, as I did for 40-some years while I was calling, you don't really miss a thing because you're with them as an individual looking for their recreation. Yes. You want to add something to this? Arnie?
Let Arnie. Getting back to what got me out of it was the loss of the fun of it. And I think that's the thing that you can laminate for your wallet, is just fun. If it isn't fun, you've got so many things, TVs, etc., etc. The lady said it's not the same period as it was back then when we didn't have any TV to draw the people away. But I've been through several salesman's training courses. I'm a salesman, quote unquote. And they have what they call KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. And that's about it. Keep it to a point where people can join the activity, miss a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and still come back and be able to dance. Now, if you miss a week, or a dance even, I'm not too sure you can keep up. I just think that simplicity is the basic element that we're missing now.
Yes. Did you want to clap for Arnie? If you have room on the laminated card, I have two things. We kid ourselves when we say mainstream. Mainstream to me means the greatest number of people interested in an activity who take part in it can take part in it. And I think if we really sat down and figured out, okay, the largest number of people who would be potential square dancers have no place, that if we could develop a mainstream that would involve them, that we would be taking a giant step forward. My second thing on your card would be a realistic caller-teacher criteria, not just on numbers of systems to call, but I would want to see every caller, potential caller, take a Dale Carnegie course. I would like to see people learn more about working with people. And I think a realistic course in calling and teaching and working with people would be a giant step.
You have 4
minutes.
No. 4 things. It's on his card.
I have 4. Okay. 1, I think we need to change our CALLERLAB convention format in a lot of ways. The reason? People have been coming for years with their wives, have had to come, and the format has been practically the same. I think we need some entertainment for our wives. We've had the Mummers come in, we've had Homer and Jethro, we've had the Red Boot Boys. I think we should add more for the people who come every year instead of the same old thing. 2, I think in some way, and I don't have the solution to it, is to establish a prerequisite teaching order. By that I mean that we should have a prerequisite before a person is allowed to start teaching. I don't know the answer to it, but we need something. The third thing is that, if possible, and I would add 1 more year to what I think Arnie said, or Lee, don't change any established plateau of dance movements. I would like to let it alone for 3 years. Not do a thing for 3 years after once it's established. I don't know whether it can be done or not. And the last thing, caller schools are accepting callers too readily for the money that they put in their pocket. And number 2, I would like to be sure that every caller who teaches a caller school, that their prerequisite be that caller who comes into that class has to be able to have danced for 2 good years before he's allowed to come into caller school.
You're getting smarter all the time. This gentleman back here had the mic.
Just a minute. I have the mic.
All right. Give us your name.
I've been on the mic before, and I don't really have a comment. I just want to make sure I'm on the tape. Hello, Mother. Now, I'd like to say one thing I think is missing, or you guys are not in the activity. I think if Bob Van, who I consider my mentor, was still here in Long Beach, I think our program would be very healthy. We miss him very much.
Someone have a house to rent in Long Beach? Yes, we have. You're next. You're next, and then we'll come to you.
Herb Hagener, Arizona. This has been a great session. It's become the third session on 50 ways to save square dancing. And before we run out of time, I'd like Bob or somebody to bridge the gap from 71 to 74 so that everybody here has a complete history of how CALLERLAB was started.
It'll be in the handout.
Let's hear it on tape.
Did you want to say something? Why don't you?
Bringing it up to date then from February 71, which was the first meeting attended by the 11 callers named. The second meeting was in July of 71. Second meeting was held in July of the same year. Don Armstrong and Earl Johnson were included as new members of that session. The total member reached 13 at this point. The next meeting was held in February of 72, at which point Jerry Haig, Jerry Helt, Jim Mayo became new members. The fourth meeting was held in July of 72 when Al Brundage and Manning Smith were invited. Incidentally, all of the people that I mentioned were invited to join. It was strictly by invitation only at this point. Let's see, Al Brundage and Manning Smith. By this time, the total membership had reached 18. At this meeting, it was decided to enlarge the group while still retaining the personal invitation method of increasing the size of membership. In February of 73, the meeting included 7 new members: Stan Burdick, Cal Golden, C.O. Guest, Jack Lazary, Johnny LeClaire, Melton Luttrell, and Bill Peters. The session concentrated on plans for the 1974 CALLERLAB convention. I think in the second meeting that we had in 1971, the name CALLERLAB was established at that point. By this time, after planning for the 74 convention, by this time the total founding and charter membership had reached 25, and this body was designated as the CALLERLAB Board of Governors. Jim Mayo was elected the association's first chairman of the board. I had the privilege of serving as chair for 71, 2, and 3 in the formative stages. CALLERLAB International, it became, in the formative years, the group named itself CALLERLAB, the International Association of Square Dance Callers, and started direction as its official publication. It was decided that during the early years, early stages, CALLERLAB would conduct business under the wing of Sets in Order, which was Bob's magazine, American Square Dance Society, SIOASDS. And the CALLERLAB's home office and staff would be provided by Sets in Order without cost to CALLERLAB. 35 cents in stamp money. In the time period of 71, 72, 73, the membership organized the structure of CALLERLAB. We can get into that if you wish. A, the concept of the Board of Governors was established. B, the need for members to attend yearly meetings at regular intervals. C, need for communication between the board and the members. D, the concept of an executive secretary. E, the concept of professional standards and the adherence thereto. Concept of incorporation to protect liability and tax for tax purposes. And the concept of disciplining members, later modified. Also, the organization followed generally that of the American Medical Association concept
suggested by Lee Helsel, who had been working then in the health field for the state of California. I don't know that there's a lot of other that needs to be said, but
that's pretty good. It's getting close to our time. She has one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to Bob Van Antwerp, who is going to keep you laughing.
Hi, I'm Mary Holton. I'm here with USA West. And I just have a comment as a relatively new dancer. The thing that attracted me to square dancing was the fact that I thought I was going to come to learn to dance, and I would dance. And I think that's the attraction that we need to keep in our minds. People just come to dance. They don't come to learn any number of calls. They don't come to with the anticipation that they're going to move up all these levels. But I came to dance, and I remembered square dancing as a child and how much fun I had doing it. And that's why I started square dancing a couple of years ago. I hope we don't get away from that. And the other comment that I'd like to make is I think that it would be very beneficial if CALLERLAB went out. Well, I would assume that CALLERLAB knows who their customers are, and their customers, I would assume, would be the dancers. So what do the dancers want? I mean, have we, and since I'm relatively new, I don't know the answer to this, but have we done any huge surveys that we could do nationwide that we could ask people what they really feel like now? I mean, if this is a new beginning, why don't we, I appreciate what CALLERLAB's trying to do to bring a change to square dancing, but I think we have to do that with the dancers to coordinate that new beginning, to find out what they're feeling right now and what they want. And maybe we do a survey and we say, hey, if you really care about this survey, put your postage stamp where your mouth is and mail this back to us. I mean, so there wouldn't be a huge expense because it could be potentially thousands of surveys to people. But find out what people want and then try and coordinate that with what the direction CALLERLAB wants to take.
Thank you very much. Bob, if you would give us a few words of wisdom and then we'll adjourn.
How many were born before 1945? I thought so. This is for you people. We are survivors. Consider the changes we have witnessed. We were born before television, before penicillin, before polio shots, frozen foods, Xerox, plastic contact lenses, Frisbees, and pill. We were before radar, credit cards, split atoms, laser beams, and ballpoint pens, before pantyhose, dishwashers, clothes dryers, electric blankets, air conditioners, drip dry clothes, and before man walked on the moon. We got married first, then lived together. How quaint can you be? Bunnies were small rabbits, and rabbits were not Volkswagens. Designer jeans were scheming girls named Jean, Jean, or Jeanne, and having a meaningful relationship meant getting along with all of our cousins. We were before house husbands, computer dating, dual careers, and commuter marriages. We were before daycare centers, group therapy, and nursing homes. We never heard of FM radio, tape decks, electric typewriters, artificial hearts, word processors, yogurt, and guys wearing earrings. For us, time sharing meant togetherness, not computers or condominiums. A chip meant a piece of wood, hardware meant hardware, and software wasn't even a word. In 1940, made in Japan meant junk, and the term making out referred to how you did on your exam. Pizza, McDonald's, and instant coffee were unheard of. We hit the scene when there was 5 and 10 cent stores where you bought things for 5 and 10 cents. Sanders or Wilson sold ice cream cones for a nickel or a dime. For 1 nickel, you could ride a streetcar and make a phone call, buy a Pepsi, or enough stamps to mail 1 letter and 2 postcards. You could buy a new Chevy Coupe for $600, but who could afford one? Because gas was 11 cents a gallon. In our day, cigarette smoking was fashionable, grass was mowed, Coke was a cold drink, and pot was something you cooked in. Rock music was a grandma's lullaby, and aides were helpers in the principal's office. We were certainly not before the difference between the sexes was discovered, but we were surely before the sex change. We made do with what we had, and we were the last generation that was so dumb as to think you needed a husband to have a baby. We wonder why we are so confused today. There is a generation gap, but we have survived, and what better reason to celebrate?
Thank you very, very much for coming. Thank you.